I don't know if this is like a really bad angle or whatever. I don't care. Obviously, like a portion of the Epstein files were released recently, and I've seen some ridiculously bad takes about feminism online. And so I've just basically just come on here to rant about my thoughts about feminism, because honestly, at the things I've been seeing, it's like I feel like I've been catapulted back in time to like 1950, and so I feel like I need to say what I feel so I can find people who agree with me, basically. So, okay, so one of the things that I would say is that I genuinely believe there's no option now for anything other than misandry, because we have literally been taught to respect these men for like our entire lives. Like every woman is born and she is taught to respect these men who don't even respect her as a human, and they don't treat us as humans. Like what we are to them is literally just a vessel, or we are just like a good time, and they don't view us as humans. And as long as they still have power, they will never view us as humans. So my opinion is that the only option is for a matriarchy, and we all need to start being a little more hateful towards men. Because what other option do we have when quite literally we aren't viewed as human? We aren't viewed as human. I mean, even like just walking down the street, there will be some man who will just look at you like you are a toy that he's entitled to play with. Like as a woman, you could walk down the street and walk past any man, and you know that they could literally take you on and do whatever, and the only thing that's stopping them is because they don't want to. You're not lucky. They're not a good person. The only thing is that they don't want to. Because living in a patriarchy, men are taught quite simply to dislike women through the use of things like just being taught to hate anything feminine, to associate feminism, no, to associate femininity with weakness, and to associate weakness as something negative, and then to associate all of those into a woman teaches them to hate women. A man's mother, a man's sister, a man's girlfriend, a man's daughter they aren't the exception, because there is always going to be something that will turn that switch on, and they will become the person you didn't know. No one has less power than a child. And so the Epstein files clearly show that that is why there are so many pedos in this fucked up world, and why so many of them are in power, because the men in power benefit from the patriarchy. The patriarchy teaches men that power is what they should crave, what they should be attracted to. And so they're attracted to the people with the least amount of power, the people that they can have power over. And that is a child. And like, you know, when men say that they want to have kids to take, like, you know, to have a legacy, to have like their own little kingdom or whatever, it's because they can have power over that. You know, a kingdom would be like, this man is the king, and then his kids are his subjects. And as a king, you have power over your subjects. When you have power, everything else is useless. Because think of like Macbeth. He was so ambitious because he craved power. And he had his wife who instilled that need for power in him. And the moment he got that power, nothing else mattered. And that was what led to his downfall. Because he had the power and he would stop at nothing to get it. Because he had everything he wanted, but now he had to protect that, and so then he had to use his power to like kill people, to wage war, you know. He had to do what he could to protect the power he had, because that was what mattered to him, and it led to his downfall, because he did an Icarus. He flew too close to the sun, and then he got killed by Macduff. So, but I also think, on a different note that's not like Men in Power or Epstein, I think it's crazy that we are taught to respect our fathers more. Women do so much of the mental labour when it comes to parenting, and you'll find that so often dads are just the fun parents, and it's like they don't do much of the mental labour, and they'll get praised for every little thing, and then you'll find that the mums are just like there doing the mental labour, and then the dads are like clocking out and then clocking back in again when it fancies them, and just stupid. Because it's like, I personally, and this might be a hear me out thing, I personally don't think fathers are all that necessary. I'm not saying that people with fathers don't deserve them or shouldn't have them. I'm saying, like, you know, when people do the whole thing like, oh, like, fatherless behaviour, or like when a gay kid, like when a lesbian couple has a kid, it's like, oh, like, but what about like the father? And it's like, some of the nicest people I know were raised by single mothers. Some of the most horrible people I've known have been raised by single fathers. It's nothing to do with being raised in a stable home. A lot of it is to do with the fact that men just suck. And a lot of the time you can find that that will reflect in their parenting. Okay. My dad didn't mentally do that much for me, and so I don't really have much of an emotional relationship with him. And a lot of people, I think, feel like that, because it's like with your parents, they're not just there to be like your mum or your dad. They're there to be like a support system for you as well. And so if one of your parents aren't there mentally or emotionally, or like they're emotionally withdrawn, then it's difficult to have a relationship with them, because it's like, well, you're just there. You're just a person living in the same house as me. I don't know you really, and you don't know me. So it's just like, and then we put so much weight on them, but then we don't give a lot of credit to mums who, you know, actually, even though they can be insane at times, do emotionally bond with their kids. But that being said, I have also had difficulties with my mum, so that might just be a parent thing. I feel like I'm going crazy sometimes, because sometimes I'll go on social media and I'll see a joke, right, that a man's made about a woman, and I don't find it funny, and I won't say anything, but a lot of the time, like, someone else will have said the same thing, like, oh, it's not funny, and then, like, the person who's made the joke will reply and be like, oh, like, can't take a joke? Like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you tell that this is a joke? And it's just like, it may be a joke, and you may not actually mean that, but it doesn't change the fact I don't understand why you genuinely find it funny to dehumanize an entire gender. Because when you joke about things, it kind of like desensitizes you. So if you're like making a joke about femicide, or you're making a joke about women driving, or you're making a joke about someone like beating a wife or whatever, or like a woman going back to the kitchen, it may seem not that deep, but it's doing what it always has, and it has the same impact that it's always had, which is to dehumanize women. That was always the goal, to dehumanize women, because, like I say, we, in the eyes of men benefiting from the patriarchy, which is all of them, we aren't human. We don't matter to them unless they benefit from it. Even if the jokes you tell may not seem that deep, they may seem completely harmless. It is the same thing that they did in 1940. All these stupid propaganda magazine posters, where it would be just showing a woman happy in the kitchen, but wouldn't be showing what would happen if she dared leave the constraints of the household. Because when you speak to your grandmothers, they will tell you it wasn't at all sunshine and rainbows. Like, I'll speak to my great-grandmother or my grandmother who grew up in that time with like a mum who had to follow these rules, and they'll tell you it wasn't pretty. Like, no, not every single woman got beat by her husband. But it wasn't just the physical abuse, it was emotional abuse, financial abuse. Women couldn't get their own credit cards at that point, so they couldn't leave. They couldn't work an actual, like, proper well-paying job, because they would have to work jobs like teachers, which, because they were primarily female-oriented jobs, they paid less, which I'm not sure if this is a thing still. Like, I don't know if they are still paid less today because it's a mainly female-oriented job, but I think that's why they pay less still. Like, a teacher's salary is fucking shocking. But yeah, they couldn't dare to dream to leave. So they had no choice but to suck it up, because otherwise they'd be out on the streets. So at least if they, did this, they'd have like a roof and food, and that was it. There was no love. The love that people idealized from that time, it's useless. There probably wasn't much love when you look at all these laws that literally legalized abuse, as long as you did it the right way. It puts it into perspective how little women were genuinely receiving in terms of love. And reform. Do not get me started on reform. The amount of propaganda that they are targeting towards women is actually terrifying, because they are not on our side. They are not on our side. They literally want to take away the Equality Act 2010, and that is incredibly risky, because A, why, and B, femicide is technically not illegal in the UK, and so if you take away the Equality Act, it kind of begs the question, will women in particular, and will women of, like, it begs the question, will women in particular be at risk? Because with the Equality Act, you can go to the police and you can't get turned away because you're a woman or because your report makes no sense. That's because of the Equality Act that we're able to do that. And so I'm just thinking, if that gets taken away, is that going to result in more domestic femicides, domestic homicides, and is it going to lead to less women getting taken seriously by the police? It begs the question. Anyways, I don't mean to be all like doom and gloom and whatever. I just feel like this stuff is important to talk about, because there's as much as you see on the internet about feminism, it is never enough. You can always speak about it more, because so many women day to day are still victims of femicides and sexual abuse. Yeah, I'm gonna go. and I'll see you soon. Stay supporting misandry. Be a misandrist. Yeah.